Hello everyone, my name's Gemma and I study French and Spanish at Aston University, and I also work as an ambassador for Roots into Languages West Midlands. And today I have the pleasure of bringing you my presentation about why you should study languages. I really hope that you enjoy and find this useful. So to start off with, I'm just going to properly introduce myself. So as I said, my name is Gemma. I'm 22 years old and I study French and Spanish. So I started learning French when I was 6 years old in year one at school, and Spanish when I was 12 in year eight. And the reason why I love languages is firstly because they're really fun to learn and also very valuable to know. Okay, so here is the first interactive element of this presentation, and this is an opportunity for you to discuss amongst your classmates, firstly, why you like languages, and secondly, if there's anyone in your class that speaks any languages that you aren't taught in schools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide the opportunity for you to pause the presentation here if you are in a situation where you are able to have this discussion, or if not, then just please carry on watching. Okay, so the next interactive element is a quiz. And again, I'm going to leave the opportunity for you to pause in between the question and the answer to discuss, but if not, then once again, please continue watching the rest of the presentation. But in the meantime, I'd like to start the quiz with the first question, which is, which language is most widely spoken in the world? And you can pause here and I will reveal the answer. So the answer is Chinese Mandarin. And I know that many people think it's English, but no, it's actually Mandarin Chinese, and English and Spanish are the second and third. Next question is, how many different known languages are there in the world? Now, this is going to be quite a precise number, so you can just guess, and whoever gets closest, I guess, will get it right. The answer is 6,912. So I really hope someone managed to get somewhat close to that, probably not the exact figure, but yes, that is how many known languages there are in the world. Third question, out of those nearly 7,000 languages, any idea how many of them are dying out? Once again, you can give an approximate guess for this one. Approximately one every 14 days. Okay, the next section of the quiz. What percentage of the world's population speak English as their first language? Only 6.5%, which may surprise you since many people think that everyone speaks English. But in terms of people who speak it as their first language, it's only a very, very small proportion. Next question, what percentage of the world's population don't speak a word of English? And 75%, which again is probably quite surprising to you. And finally, what percentage of the world's population does not speak English as their first language? 94%. So I really hope you enjoyed this little quiz and it gave you some insight into some facts about languages in general. And I hope that maybe it debunked some myths and taught you something that you didn't know. So thank you for participating if you did. And also, I just have a few more little did you know facts for you that you may not already know. So first of all, about 30% of English words come from French. And you may not know that it was 30%, but I suppose if you think about, say, for example, with food and cooking, we have a lot of words that we borrow from French, and that is because often when words are borrowed from other languages, it is the case because of prestige. And it's restaurants use a lot of French words to make their food and their sound more fancy. So I'm sure that you can think of many words that sound similar to French when you're speaking English if you learn French at school. Many countries have regional languages that we've never even heard of. And this is true for most European countries and a lot of African countries as well. For example, in Spain, in Barcelona, they speak Catalan as it is in Catalonia, but most people don't actually know that unless you've either been there or you know a lot about the country. And in France, down in the south, they speak a regional language called Occitan as well, which is a special language for the Occitan region. So yes, that's something that many people do not know unless they really know a lot about the culture of certain countries. And the next fact is that Queen Elizabeth II is fluent in French. And at least half of the world's population is bilingual, which means they can speak two languages or more. And learning languages is great for your memory and helps you to maintain a healthy brain in later life. So understanding a different language helps you to understand different countries and cultures. So you can see that learning a language doesn't just provide you with a new vocabulary, but a really much wider understanding of the world and the people in it. And also, the languages that we learn in schools, for example, are not just spoken in their typical countries. For example, here, French is not just spoken in France, it's spoken in Canada, the West Indies, parts of Africa. Spanish is spoken in most Latin American countries, and German is spoken in Austria, Liechtenstein, and parts of Switzerland, Italy, Belgium, and Luxembourg. So it just goes to show that if you're learning a language, it doesn't just provide you knowledge for traveling to Europe or working with people in Europe, but really all over the world. And speaking a language can be great fun, of course. We must always recognize the more educational and professional benefits, but it also is a lot of fun. And it really is a brilliant feeling being able to communicate with people from a different country. And when you manage to have a successful conversation with them and you feel like you're really interacting with them, it really is an amazing feeling. I've reached that level recently, and I feel always very proud of myself when I've had a conversation in a foreign language. And having knowledge of a language can unlock doors that may otherwise remain shut, and that is both in an educational, professional sense, but it can also lead to new connections with other people. And of course, making friends with other people in other places for life. Of course, like we all know, it is a really good qualification to have, whether that is at GCSE, A level, or degree level. Having some sort of knowledge of a language that has been certified on a qualification is really valuable for your future. And like it says here, employers are really impressed by people that can speak another language. And businesses need language speakers, especially after Brexit, when we're having to undergo a lot of changes in politics and in business. That's why businesses and companies really, really need people who are able to have these interactions in other languages to increase understanding and make sure that we can get through these changes smoothly. And understanding more than one language shows that you have good communication skills, and you can also gain more awareness of your native language by learning new ones. And I definitely think this is the case for me. I feel like I can pick out mistakes in English grammar a lot easier when I know the French or Spanish equivalent. So there really are so many benefits to learning languages, as we saw in the previous slide, for your more personal growth and your relationships with other people, but then on the more serious side in education and in jobs. And you gain so many skills from learning another language. For example, empathy, because as we said, it improves your communication skills. So you really are learning how to better interact with a variety of people. And listening skills, I'm sure you'll all know from those listening activities you do at school how important listening is in a language. And open-mindedness, because of the increased cultural awareness that you gain. Confidence, because when you're having to use another language to communicate, sometimes it's really scary, but then when you overcome that obstacle, you become a lot more confident and able to build relationships easily. And that's because you are becoming more accepting of other people and you have a wider world view, so you're more open to accepting other ways of doing things. Problem solving skills, social skills, presentation skills, because you're much more confident at communicating. So doing presentations are a lot easier when you have learned another language and have spoken it to people. Team working skills, cultural awareness, flexibility, commitment, because of course we all know that learning a language requires a lot of perseverance and dedication. And there we go. So in terms of careers with languages, up on the screen now are some examples of some sectors and some different job titles that you can go into if you have qualifications in languages. So for example, first up we have the media. And actually, it might surprise you that a lot of the journalists who work for the BBC have actually studied languages at university. So that just goes to show that the skills that you gain from learning languages, that isn't just learning the words, but learning about the world and cultures and other ways of doing things is really advantageous if you want to work in international affairs. And then you can become a lawyer as well, especially in international law. That lends itself very well to language qualifications. Of course, you could become a teacher, which is more of an obvious one. An international manager in a big international company, forensic linguistics, an academic researcher, broadcast journalist, diplomatic service, which is where you become a diplomat and you represent the UK's political and commercial interests to overseas territories. Cabin crew for airlines. You can work in an import and export sector in a company, especially one that deals with a lot of countries overseas. Of course, the internet and the technology sector still needs linguists. A translator, that is another obvious one. Alongside that, you could also say an interpreter as well. Customer support for probably international companies, and advertising and marketing, which I think this is especially a good one for linguists because advertising and marketing is all about communication to your target audience. And I think that people who speak other languages and maybe have had international experience would be able to broaden their horizons and have a wider view and target a wider amount of people, because you can think about strategies that would work overseas and not just in the UK. And during the third year of a languages degree at any university, you are expected to undertake a year abroad. And during this year, you will go to the countries where your chosen languages or language is spoken, and you can either work or study in a foreign university. And at my university, we are very lucky to have at our disposal so many international opportunities in both smaller companies but also really big companies that you will probably know. So on the screen here, I have names of some very large companies where some of my friends and I have spent a certain amount of time as interns working during our year abroad, and just some images as well to go with that. So, for example, a friend of mine worked for Radisson Hotels, and then you also work at HSBC, Deutsche Bank, the European Commission, PwC, Stanley Black and Decker, the British Chamber of Commerce, Deloitte, Total, British Council, and Air France. Those are just a few examples of the opportunities that are available at Aston University. This will vary between institutions. And there is also the opportunity to go out and find your own work experience that the university doesn't already have a link with as well. So you really do have a lot of options depending on what you want to do. And for my own placement experience, I was lucky enough to do an internship at Air France, which I'm sure you all know exactly what Air France is by the picture. So my job as English language assistant involved preparing conversation classes at various levels for more than 60 staff. And this is because the people who I was teaching were training to gain certification in English language to gain promotion. So I would help beginners, intermediate, more advanced people improve their language skills in time for their tests, in the hope that they would move up a level and gain a promotion. I would also have to manage my own weekly tuition schedule across two offices of Air France in Toulouse, which was the city where I was based. And that would include booking in new students, dealing with cancellations of lessons, and just making sure that the schedule was really organised and that my lessons would run smoothly. I would also propose new ideas for language training programs. So I would liaise with my boss regularly to talk to him about what was working, what was not working, and we would put together different ideas to suit the people who I was trying to help. So, and then as I briefly touched on before, I'd help prepare them for English tests and just help in general with communications in English around the office, whether that would be translating an email or a presentation. That's one that I did. And also just helping people with phone calls or understanding communications from colleagues in other areas. I was just there to provide language support in English for anyone who wanted it. And here I just have a few photos just to bring my experience to life a little bit more for you all. So this first one is a picture of me on my last day standing outside my office, and I did have my own office where I would have all of the people come for classes, and that would be where I was based. And then there's another picture of my office. As you can tell, it was quite big and really, really nice with an amazing view. And that was the main site where we were based, near Toulouse Airport. And that is the main building in the city centre of Toulouse. It was a really lovely building, and I captured that picture in the evening. And of course, it would be rude to not have a crepe with ice cream when in France. And I have a few cool facts about Toulouse to tell you all, since there is a lot of people that don't really know a lot about the city. So the first fact is that it's the home of the aviation industry, and the main Airbus factory is situated in Toulouse near the airport. So that's where a lot of really big aeroplanes are made. And it's also the home to a really large aviation museum where the famous Air France Concorde plane is now there after it was retired many years ago. And another cool fact is that this aeroplane, called the Airbus Beluga, it's in the shape of a beluga whale. As you can see, it's very, very odd shape. And there are even some that have like a little smiley face and eyes on them, make them look like a whale. And they're shaped like that to enable Airbus to transport parts of planes, such as like wings and other things that need to be transported from different Airbus factories around Europe to the main one in Toulouse. And you would often see a lot of these little funny whale-shaped planes in the sky in Toulouse. The next fun fact about Toulouse is that a pain au chocolat, as you all know, is probably a snack that you all really enjoy having, is actually referred to as a chocolatine. And it's just the same as how in England we have the debate of what a bread roll is called in the north and in the south. But in the Occitan region, which is down in the south of France, a pain au chocolat is a chocolatine. And in Toulouse, you can actually buy a lot of merchandise and little gifts and souvenirs with chocolatines on them. And my favourite one being this pair of socks that you can get from a little independent boutique. And it is a pair of socks with chocolatines on. So I think that's really, really funny. But it's just one of those little things that is a regional variation. And even in the supermarkets, when they sell the pan of chocolates in a box, they are called chocolatines on the label. And the next fact, or the third and final fact, is that Toulouse as a city is known as La Ville Rose, or the Pink City, because all of the bricks are made out are pink, and especially when the sun sets, all the city just glows pink. As you can see, the bricks are like a lovely orangey pink terracotta colour. So that is why it's called the Pink City to the locals. And of course, because I study Spanish, I also got to spend some time in Spain. I went to Madrid, but unfortunately, my time there was cut very short due to the coronavirus. I stayed there for only 6 weeks when I should have been there for 5 months. And I was working at a company called Lupithinio International Law Firm. And here's a picture of the office where we were based. As you can tell, it is a very beautiful office, very different to France, but still very beautiful. And that was a picture of the main reception area. So my job as a translator and marketing intern, which was what I was doing there, my responsibilities was included translating letters, leaflets, social media posts, contracts, legal documents, and presentations from Spanish into English. And sometimes I even did a bit of French as well. I'd also help manage social media campaigns for the firm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and also on the mailing list for clients and staff. Again, here, creating newsletters for clients and staff in English and in Spanish. So at the end of every month, we would collate all the publications that the firm has done, all the events that we had done, and we would put it all together in a newsletter and send it out to a database of about 3,000 different email addresses. I would also write letters on behalf of the managing partner in Spanish and in English to various clients and other law firms across the world. And before the pandemic got really bad, I was actually helping to organise the firm's 40th anniversary party, which should have been held in our office in June, but unfortunately that was cancelled. And here's just a few more pictures. So that was the sign on the outside of the office, and that was one of our main meeting rooms. And we had some food and drink for a little party that we were having at the end of the month, and that was the main meeting room, which, as you can see, it's very beautiful. And this is a lovely picture of the sun setting on my way home from work one of the nights. Another one, and that is Seoul, and that is the town hall right in the centre of the city. So, just to summarise, so why should you study a language? It gives you an understanding of different countries and cultures, and it's great fun. It helps you when you're travelling abroad, or you could even live abroad in the future. It's a great qualification to have and can lead to some exciting careers, and it allows you to make new friends and contacts. And of course, it's a practical skill which stays with you for the rest of your life. Now, in this part of the presentation, I would like to share a few of my best tips for language learning. These are all things that I've picked up over the years that have really helped me and people who I've known. And I just wanted to share them with you guys, just in case they could be helpful to you. You may already know some of them, but it'd be great if you could maybe try some out and see if they help you like they helped me. So my first piece of advice is to practice little and often. And I think languages is one of those subjects where you can practice in very small chunks, especially when you're learning vocabulary. And I think that with languages, you've got to keep it up going often. Don't go for long periods of time without practicing. But the upside of that is that you can do just a few minutes a day, and that will be a really good way to contribute towards your development. The next one is make use of technology and apps such as Duolingo and Quizlet. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Duolingo, and there's so many languages on there that you can practice. And you've got French, Spanish, and German, which are the most commonly learned languages in schools. And you can play games and you can learn a lot of vocabulary in a really fun way on Duolingo. And Quizlet, you may have heard of, but this is an app that allows you to help you learn your vocabulary in a more creative way. So you can create digital flashcards and vocab lists, but you can also practice spelling on Quizlet, and you can even turn your vocab list into a game. And it's just a really convenient way to store all of those vocab lists that you may have written down on scraps of paper that you may lose, and you can just keep them all in folders on your Quizlet, and you can print them off or use their lists online. You can do whatever you want, and I highly recommend this, especially if any of you take languages to GCSE. You're going to have to learn quite a bit of vocab. I would really recommend organising your studies on Quizlet. And my next tip is to make it fun. And especially since, of course, I'm aiming this presentation at year 7, 8 and 9, you are not doing your GCSEs yet. So right now you can really focus on making language learning very fun without having to focus on exam technique as such. So for example, when I was your age, I would used to like to draw pictures to help me remember words, and you use highlighters, coloured pens, to make your vocab list look really colourful. And that's definitely something that I still do now. Even as a university student, I still use a lot of highlighters and coloured pens. And as I said before, you can play games and even make word searches. For example, I remember when I first started doing Spanish in year 8, we used to have a homework task every week to make a word search out of the vocab that we learned in that lesson, and then we would swap them in the class the next week, and we would have a go at all of our friends' word searches. So yeah, I think especially before you start your exam years, take advantage of the opportunity to have fun with language learning and not stressing about exam technique. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I know that that is one thing that holds people back in language learning, especially maybe younger students like yourselves in class. You don't want to put your hand up and make a mistake in front of everyone, but actually, I know it may not seem like it, but making mistakes is actually the best way that you can learn, because if you make a mistake, you will remember to never do it again. And you can learn even things that even aren't in the lesson plan if you make a mistake, because often teachers would say, oh, this, let me just tell you this. So you can learn so much from your own mistakes and other people's mistakes as well. And don't be shy. There's my last tip. It is just to make sure that you're not afraid of making mistakes, and that you're not afraid to speak up, and really try and push yourself outside your comfort zone when you feel you want to, because it will really pay off and it will be great for your development as language learners. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I'm going to include a Q&A section, and normally when we do live presentations we will ask the teachers or the students to send in questions for us and we'll answer them at the end. However, since this is a recorded presentation for multiple schools to use, we've decided to collate our most frequently asked questions and put them at the end of this presentation. So I hope that you find this useful. Okay, so the first question is, how is knowing a different language useful in everyday life? So obviously in the presentation we have spoken about how languages are a skill for life, and I just think you will never know when a situation will arise where using a language will be really useful. So for example, it could be at work if someone needs to communicate with a colleague abroad and you need a basic knowledge or even a more advanced knowledge of a language. Or it may just be in any random situation in life. If you're helping someone or if you meet someone from another country, you may need a bit of knowledge of a foreign language. So I would just say that scenarios where language knowledge is really useful can come up at any time. So just having that skill and knowledge is just going to be so valuable. Second question, what careers are available for students who do a degree in languages? So of course, again, in the presentation, we have seen some options. So for example, you've got your more obvious options such as teaching or being a translator and interpreter, but then you also have so many other options such as marketing and working for international companies in business or even in politics. And I just think that the skills that you gain from learning a language and the things that you can prove if you have a languages degree. So, for example, you can prove that you're dedicated, because learning a language requires a lot of dedication. You can prove that you have a good memory, that you're flexible, and that you are good at learning things. And that also you have cultural awareness. I just think that all of those transferable skills can mean that you could be good at so many different jobs, even if there's no direct use of language. Number 3, what tips and strategies can you give us to help make language learning easier? I would say make sure you practice little and often, because I think languages is really good in the sense that it's one of those few subjects where you can actually just do 10 minutes a day and it's enough. And I think as long as you do say little and often, so don't just do 10 minutes a day and leave it, but make sure that that short amount of time that you're spending each day, but that you repeat it regularly. I think that it's good that you can learn it in small chunks and it builds up really nicely, whereas with some other subjects you have to sit down for an hour, a couple hours to get stuff done. And I would just say that make sure that you know your learning style. So of course we have more visual learners, people who learn more by listening and people who learn more by doing, or a combination of those. So just make sure that before you get to your exam years that you're really getting to know yourself as a learner. You're trying lots of revision techniques, and you can try different ones for your class tests or maybe your internal school exams. And if they don't work, then it's okay, because those results don't count towards your GCSEs or your A levels. But just make sure that you go through that process of trial and error and really know your learning style. So when you get to your GCSEs, it's so much easier to know what works for you. Number 4, how do you remember all the vocabulary? So I don't remember all the vocabulary that I come across, not at all, but I think that over the years I have perfected my techniques for retaining as much as possible. So for example, I told you in the last section about Quizlet, and that is an app that I would recommend to you, but also one that I still use myself. So if I get a list of vocabulary, I put it in Quizlet, and I have the app downloaded on my phone so I can just quickly go through all the words on the go, and anywhere you want really. But also I think, again, this is about knowing your learning style. So for me, using coloured pens works great. Making colourful lists, because it makes me want to look at them if they look nice. So I would just say, just make sure that you've got some methods that work for you, but don't beat yourself up if you don't remember everything, because we never do. There's always words that slip our minds, especially ones that we don't really use that much. But I'd say just always make sure that you're practicing little and often and knowing your learning style, and that is the best way to remember everything that you need to know. Number 5, how will learning a language help us if we are never going to travel abroad? So as I said in the first question, I think that even in the UK there are so many situations where knowing a language is going to be useful. But I just think that, it's those transferable skills as well, like we've talked about, having a good memory, being flexible, being dedicated. So I just think that just because you think you won't travel abroad, that doesn't mean that language knowledge isn't beneficial. But then you may surprise yourself and you may have an opportunity to travel abroad, and then you'll be really glad that you have learned that language. Number 6, can I only be a teacher, translator, or interpreter with A level or degree in languages? Absolutely not. If you go back to the last one of the other slides in the presentation, you can see there's so many options, and you'll find that if you go to university and study languages, when you get to the end and you start to look for jobs, there are so many job opportunities for university graduates that don't care what degree you have. They just want a good degree in any subject. So there's so much more that you can do. And also you can take a further degree, say a master's degree, which is what I'm going to do, and you can add another specialism to your languages. So for example, for me, I'm going to be doing international relations, which is basically politics, but just a little bit different. So you can study your languages, add something else, and then you've got something to apply your languages to, which is really, really useful. Next question, number 7. Did you ever find language learning difficult, and how did you overcome this? Yes, definitely. Although I would say languages has always been my strongest subject, and I've never had real struggles with it. There's always been little challenges along the way. For example, I think I must say with grammar, I think grammar, there's always a grammar point that just really stumps you, and that you don't, it takes ages to get it in your head, and you always forget it, you always make mistakes, and it takes a lot of reinforcement. And sometimes with vocab as well, when you say when you're at school doing GCSEs and you've got a lot of subjects going, and sometimes maybe your languages just falls by the wayside a little bit if you've got to focus on other subjects. I think that's when language learning is difficult, but I think that just my advice for getting over these obstacles is to keep trying. And if you're not getting anywhere, then speak to your teacher, because they will have had students like you who've struggled with that before, and they'll be able to give advice. They may have even struggled with it themselves, so they'll be able to give advice from a personal perspective, and they'll be able to help you maybe even just overcome the frustration and just reassure you that it's completely normal to find something difficult. Number 8, what cultural differences did you notice in where you went for placement? So in France, I didn't really notice too many differences, and that's because for me personally, I've spent a lot of time in France with my family in the past, so I didn't notice too much. I think more the differences that I did notice was making that transition into my first kind of proper job, because I was working a 9 to 5 for the first time in my life. So I think the differences I noticed there were more to do with that. But in Spain, I noticed a lot of differences. For example, how it is more socially acceptable in Spain to be late to things, to work or to whatever, that is in the UK. And also that everything is done a lot later in Spain. For example, we would break up for lunch from work at 2:30, and we'd finish work at 7:30, and everyone would eat dinner at like 9, 10 o'clock. That was a real cultural difference. But I think that overall, I think obviously we're still in Europe, we're still in the Western world, so there's not too many cultural differences, just a couple of little things. Number 9, what do you intend to do as a job? So, as I previously mentioned, I'll be doing a master's degree in international relations next year, and I'll be specialising in European politics. So, at the moment, I quite like the idea of becoming a researcher in a think tank or a policy institute of some kind, which are basically, they are non-government organisations that advise on political affairs. So I quite enjoy doing that at the moment. Are you still in touch with people from your year abroad? Yes, I am actually. My friends from Spain, we still have a group chat and we still talk, and we've had some occasional little Spanish chats with each other on Skype. But of course, people are still very busy, and with the pandemic, everyone's life situation is a bit crazy right now. So yes, we are still in touch, but not maybe as regularly as we'd like to. But I know that if I was to ever go back to Madrid, I know that they would be really happy for me to come stay with them and meet up with me. So yes, answer is yes, I am still in touch with people from Spain. How has language learning helped you develop as a person? I think the biggest thing for me has been confidence, because I think if I can hold a conversation in a foreign language, whether it's with someone I know or someone I don't know, I can do it in English. So I feel so much more confident just talking to anyone in English now. And also, I think the opportunity to spend time in France and Spain and to work in France and Spain has given me more confidence for the beginning of my adult life, my working life, and just that I can deal with more situations than I think I'm capable of dealing with. And I just think that in general, language is just a very social subject. So it has made me more confident about making friends because I've realized that I've been able to make friends quite easily with people from other countries. So it just makes me feel a lot better about my social activities, I guess. I know I've got friends in other countries, so I think it's not too hard to make friends in my own country now. Number 12, do you need an A level to carry on learning a language? Not necessarily, no. I think that doing an A level in a language would make it a lot easier to practice because you have to for your A level, and it makes it a lot easier to be consistent. But if you're really dedicated and you want to do it as a hobby, you can always do it alongside your A levels and use apps such as Duolingo. Number 13, what impact does having a language on your CV, college application, or university application have? I think, like we said about jobs, I think it just shows that you, for one, have a decent level of academic skills because languages are not exactly easy subjects to master. And it just shows that, again, you have that perseverance and the dedication and the good work ethic to really master something. So, yeah, and I think it's just overall, it's just a well respected subject because of the difficulty of it. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth having a language on your college or university application, even if you don't plan to do languages there. Does having a language benefit you in the world of work? Yes, as we said before, you never know when at work something's going to come up, and especially because a lot of companies these days are global, you never know if you're going to have people from another country come visit you. You may have to go on a business trip elsewhere, or you may just have to have a Skype call with someone, or have basic translation skills to read an email. So any scenario in a worldwide company, language knowledge is going to be great. 15. In your opinion, what is the best language to learn and why? Well, I think, of course, French and Spanish are the best ones to learn because they're the ones that I really enjoy learning the most. But I think, in terms of starting as a beginner, I would say that French is the best one to start with purely because most of the basic vocabulary you can find some similarity with English. I think that Spanish is easier to learn in terms of grammar because there are less exceptions to the grammar rules, so it makes it a bit easier to remember and easier to use. But I think the basic vocabulary in Spanish is less similar to English. I remember when we all started Spanish at school, people found Spanish harder actually because some of the words were just so far removed from English, they were hard to remember. But in French, people struggled less. But then, like I say, when you get to a higher level, I think Spanish is easier because the grammar's easier. 16. What do you count as being fluent in a language? So this is something that I've asked myself a lot over the years as I have come to speak at a more advanced level. I have often said to myself, am I fluent yet? And I would say that there are different degrees of fluency. You've got your native level fluency, so like me speaking English, I am a native level English speaker, of course, because I've lived here all my life. But I think that you can class yourself as fluent in a foreign language when you're able to hold a conversation with people and talk about nearly anything, and that if you struggle to say something, that you can find a way around it and that you don't have to just revert back to English. So I think that it's not having perfect knowledge of the language, I think it's having a good enough knowledge of the language that you can get around any difficulties that you have. 17. Why did you choose to study the languages you chose? So I didn't actually pick French and Spanish as my languages. They were just the ones offered at school. But I chose to pursue them further just because I really enjoyed them and I knew that they were two really, really useful languages in general life and for careers. And I just really enjoyed them. I think for me, obviously, I knew languages were useful, and I've become more aware of that as I've got older. But I think first and foremost, it was just pure enjoyment of the subject. I wasn't really thinking about careers, I wasn't thinking about employability or university at that time. I was just doing what I enjoyed. 18. Why is learning languages so important since so many people have access to Google Translate? So I'm sure your teachers have told you about Google Translate and that it is not a very intelligent machine. And what I mean by that is that it can translate basic text, it can translate complex text as well with the pure words, but when it comes to the finer details and things that can be a little bit confusing or a little bit ambiguous, such as the tone of what's being said or maybe the context, Google can't pick that up very well and it can come out a little bit clumsy. So I would say that if it's something really basic, then Google could do it. Or if you need to just get the meaning of a word, Google can do it. But if you want a real high quality, authentic text, which is what a lot of people demand these days, in the world of work, second best is never good enough. I think you're going to need a human translator to help out with that because Google, it's not as smart as we think it is. So thank you so much for watching my presentation. I really hope that you enjoyed that question section at the end. So good luck for your language learning journey. I'm sure you'll all be fantastic. And thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed.